Okay, Daniel Harris is joining us on the line now. Good morning, Daniel.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Thank you.
We'll get to Manchester City and Liverpool a little bit later on, because it's another massive weekend in the title race. I think every weekend for the last few weeks has been and will be for the next month or so as well. But there was a story that we just touched on when we were going through our paper round this morning on the back of the Sun. It's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has apparently launched into a few of his big names after the 3-0 defeat at the Nou Camp the other night. I don't know, would you have seen any of it in the papers this morning? But it probably would have been warranted, I think, maybe with some of the performance. I think he questioned the attitude of a few of them, that they weren't giving 100%. Is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer starting to really just discover what it's like now, being the permanent manager as opposed to being the stand-in, as opposed to being the nice guy who's here just for a few months?
I'm not sure about that. I think when you hear him talk about United, it seems quite clear that he spent quite a lot of time before he got the United job watching United play. So he probably had a fairly good idea of what he was coming to discover. And it went unexpectedly well at the beginning, but I don't think anyone's surprised. I'm certainly not surprised he's had to have these kind of conversations, because I think that you've got players who do that a certain level of mental fortitude, and they're not reliable. You can't rely on their effort and you can't rely on their quality. So the fact that a manager's having to have those conversations is not surprising. I think the only surprising thing is that it's taken so long for them to be necessary.
Yeah, 5 defeats in 7 now at the moment. Like, are you worried at all about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
No, not really.
I'm not suggesting he's going to be, like, sacked in 2 weeks' time or anything like that if they lose a couple of games. But you're not really that overly worried with the signs you're seeing on the pitch. You're expecting maybe a lot of changes in the summer.
I would say that the chances are he's not the right man for the job, because there are very few people existing in the world who could do this job and succeed at it, I think. And things that are too good to be true generally are too good to be true. Seems unlikely you can be a high-level player for United, then turn up having managed Mold and Cardiff and be a great manager. But I think that what's happening at the moment is inevitable, because if United carried on as they were doing for the first few months when Solskjaer was the manager, you'd be getting championship form out of them. And this is not a championship team. So I think it was inevitable that there was going to be a drop. And if you look at the games they've lost, I would be more inclined to say, well, which games do I think that they've been beaten in, when I think those were the fault of the manager rather than the fault of the players not being good enough. I'm not sure that this team, however any manager arranges it, is going to be able to go to the Nou Camp and get a result. I felt like the cup game against Wolves, Solskjaer picked the wrong team, rushing back too many players from injury, and when it wasn't going United's way, he didn't change it in time. Against Arsenal, Lukaku missed an empty net almost from 4 yards out. I don't think that's on Solskjaer. The finishing against Wolves in the league also, United should have had that game gone, finished, well before they lost the game. And again, looked like Solskjaer picked the right team that night, picked the right tactics, and the players didn't execute them properly. They played quite well, but in the end, they weren't ruthless. And I don't think that is on Solskjaer either. So it's easy to say, well, this is Solskjaer's fault, he's not got enough experience. But if the same people who are saying that are also agreeing that the players aren't good enough, then what do they expect? So I think that the scale of the job is becoming more apparent. But at the same time, there are some good players there, and players who, playing in a good team, would probably be quite good. What he needs to find players this summer to elevate that, players who can actually make a not such a good team a good team, and he doesn't have a lot of margin for error, because he won't get given enough money to be able to waste any of it.
Yeah, you mentioned finding players has to be important. Is it even more important to find those players to play a little bit closer to your own goal than the opposition's?
I'm actually not sure about that, in that obviously United could do with some better centre-backs. Of course they could. But if you had a better midfield, you'd find the centre-backs had quite a lot less work to do. And if you look, for example, at Manchester City, if you gave their centre-backs the amount of work that Smalling and Lindelof have to do, I think you'd see that they conceded quite a lot more goals. And similarly, if you put City's midfield in front of Smalling and Lindelof, you would find that they look more solid, because they would have less to do. So I think that what United really need is they need 2 midfield players who are going to enable them to control the game. Because at the moment, United are unable to control games against midfield, even against kind of good Premier League teams like Leicester, never mind the better Premier League teams, and then never mind the better teams in Europe. So I would say that if you sort the midfield out, then you would immediately create more chances, keep the ball more and protect the defence better. And those would be the key elements of the team that I would say you have to improve whatever happens. If they end up signing a better centre-back, then that would be good, but it definitely isn't where I would start.
Yeah, looking ahead, we'll move on, I suppose, towards the title race. Liverpool and Man City both in action this weekend. Liverpool, they're away to Cardiff on Sunday. Before that, Man City will have the chance to get back above Liverpool and move level on 34 games played as well when they take on Spurs tomorrow. Just a few days after that incredible game at the Etihad the other night, I can't for the life of me see how we're going to get anything even close to that tomorrow morning.
No, I would expect not. I mean, I would expect that City will win that game quite comfortably because, I mean, both teams need the points, and both teams will be on the come down. But City will probably be fired with some level of injustice, and they're just a better team. So I would expect them to get it done. But I was surprised because I was surprised that Spurs got past City, but also I was surprised that Spurs got past City by playing how they played. And this isn't particularly a criticism of Spurs because half the team that played weren't fit, and they were without Harry Kane as well, and they've still found a way to get it done. But it didn't seem like they got past City by outplaying them or by out-tacticking them. It's just because football is a chaotic game, and City made mistakes at the wrong moment, and sometimes those things happen. If City play anything like the way they played on Wednesday night, they'll win quite comfortably. But then if they'd have played anything like that in the first leg, they would have won the tie quite comfortably. So you can never exactly predict what's going to happen, but I think that City will be okay in that one.
So if City and Liverpool both win all of their games between now and the end of the season, it's City who win the title. Even still, would you still make City the favourites overall? Like, they do have the tougher run in Spurs tomorrow and Man United coming on Wednesday.
I think it's marginal now. I mean, yeah. I've been sitting here all season saying City will win the league and probably by a few points because they're much better than Liverpool. And I mean, I guess I still think that City's best is way better than Liverpool's best, but Liverpool have done a phenomenal job. And I think in the end, you've got to look at it and admire what Jurgen Klopp's done, because when you look at Liverpool's players, and if you just look at their 1 to 11, you kind of wonder how it works, in that Van Dijk is obviously an elite level player, and the three forwards are really good. Although if you had free rein to go and buy any of the forwards in the world, you wouldn't be taking any of theirs. And what that tells you is Jurgen Klopp has worked out a blend. He's worked out a team that works from front to back, and he's also worked out a team that works in partnerships. So the front three work. You get enough goals out of them, and you generally get enough goals at the right time. And he's got a midfield that protects the defence and gets enough of the ball to those players, despite the fact that when you actually look at that midfield, in whatever configuration of Keita, Wijnaldum, Milner, Henderson it is, somehow it's working, and that is all on Jurgen Klopp, really. And you can only admire what he's done. So to start saying Liverpool are going to lose games to crap teams at this point, I mean, I've been waiting for that to happen most of the season, and it hasn't happened. So they don't look nervous now. Sort of at the end of January, at the beginning of February, when they dropped points to West Ham, they dropped points to Leicester, those weren't good performances that the chaotic nature of football somehow turned into draws. Those were performances of a team that is going for a title and is nervous, and you can feel the crowd getting nervous. But I think mainly thanks to Sadio Mane on the pitch, who was the one who stood up at that point, they've managed to turn it around. And now Liverpool, even when they've been chasing games, when they chased the game against Tottenham, they weren't doing so in a frantic way. They were doing so in an intense way, but in a controlled way, like a team that knew they were going to score. And also against Chelsea, when they were 0-0 at half-time, that is an opportunity to get nervous, and they didn't take it. They were cold, and they were furious, and they managed to get it done. So I would expect Liverpool to win their games, but then I would expect City to win their games as well, because they're significantly better than all the teams they're playing. I guess history tells us that someone will drop points somewhere, because it's unusual for one team even to go on a winning run to end the season, never mind two. But if I was betting, I would marginally be betting on City, but generally I'd be staying out of that. Yeah,
you mentioned the mentality there at Liverpool, which I've kind of found really, really interesting, because I'd say it was probably a couple of months ago, I can't remember exactly, they played Crystal Palace, and we would have done live commentary of that game that day. And I remember all of us remarking, just like, even our commentary team were saying it, just the atmosphere around Anfield, every single person was so on edge. It was so tense. The players on the pitch looked nervous, the fans looked nervous, and we were thinking, how in the name of God are we going to do this for another 2.5 months? But it just kind of seems that the longer it's going on, they're just getting used to it. The fans don't seem to be as on edge or as nervous. The players seem to be a lot more comfortable and controlled, even when they are chasing a game, when they might be level, or when they were behind against Southampton a few weeks ago. It seems that they're kind of growing into the title race a little bit more from a mental side of things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They've got used to the pressure, and I guess in a way, as a player, this is why you play. These are the days of your lives. If you can't enjoy the level of tension, then you're in the wrong sport, really, and in the wrong profession. And they've started to look like they're enjoying it, and they've started to look like they believe that it's going to happen for them. And it doesn't matter if destiny is a load of nonsense if people buy into it, because once people start believing in those things, it gives them the freedom to go and perform. And that's what we've seen from Liverpool. And what we look about Liverpool is there's no area of their team at the moment that you could say isn't functioning. They've had the problem of creativity from midfield all season. And, I mean, you can see why Klopp wanted to sign Fekir in the summer. But actually, at the moment, they appear to have found some level of solution to that. That might not be a long-term solution of playing Jordan Henderson further forward, but for now, it's working. And it doesn't need to work for that much longer. And when you look at their fixtures, Newcastle away, Newcastle will make it difficult, and it might be tight for a bit, but in the end, the class will probably tell. So if City do drop points, what it will probably come down to is whether they bottle that last game against Wolves, because the weight of the pressure of 29 years is upon them. But otherwise, it's hard to see them dropping points, but you never quite know what will happen with injuries or what will happen. They've got to play Barcelona twice. So there is still quite a lot of football to happen, and you should never assume that because a team's playing well at one moment, it will be playing well at the next moment, never mind a few moments down the road, because football teams have 11 players in them. That's a lot of moving parts. So momentum is hard to gain and easy to lose. But at the moment, they're looking very strong. And as I said, like, Jurgen Klopp's done a phenomenal job in making that happen, because they've stayed with City all the way. And that's not easy to do. City are also a team that is very grooved and honed. And so in order to stay with them, you have to get a lot of points. And that's really why I thought Liverpool would fall down. If it was a low points tally, then it's easier for an inferior team to win the league. And I don't think that Liverpool are as good as City, but they've managed to find a way to keep beating everyone else. And you can only congratulate them for that.
To go back to Spurs and Man City the other night as well, I would have seen you talk about VAR a lot over the last year or so on Twitter, and how you would have said it kind of takes the joy out of the moment of being a football fan, when that ball hits the net and all of a sudden now you're kind of wondering, is it a goal, is it not a goal, is it a penalty, is it this or that, is it a red card? Has the last couple of months, maybe a Champions League, has that just reinforced your opinion of it, or has the incredible number of VAR moments we've had, has it changed it at all?
No, not really. I guess for me, like, when your team scores, that is not just the greatest moment in football. That's the greatest moment you get to experience in your life on a regular basis. No offence to my wife and daughter, but they understand the difference. But
so what? Like, just a goal against Fulham in a 3:00 game to go 2-0 up. That is better than being a married man and having a kid.
I don't know. Yeah, that crucial goal obviously is the greatest feeling that exists. Like, you never experience spontaneous ecstasy like that really in any other environment, any other circumstance in your life. And I personally wouldn't sacrifice that for anything. And for people watching at home, obviously, it does increase the drama, but I think it's funny because the VAR decision at the end, it's the Sterling goal that was ruled out for offside. That, to me, is in some ways shows you the best side of VAR, and the other side shows you the worst of VAR, because it's the best of VAR in that the decision was a howler, and that's the kind of the catchphrase that people always talk about in cricket, where they say that the point of DRS is to eliminate the howler. And I felt like that's what VAR did there. But on the other hand, it felt like that Sterling one. When Aguero was offside, it didn't need backwards and forwards. It didn't need lines on the screen. Yeah. It was a really clear offside. So it was quite a significant error, I thought, by the officials, and actually one where you think, lads, you should actually be spotting that first time. Obviously, you want you want the referees to get the decisions correct, but no one fell in love with football because the standard of decision making was correct. Sometimes the decisions are correct and sometimes the decisions are incorrect, and if you're an adult, you should be able to put that behind you quite quickly because it's not real life, it's football. So for me, it doesn't really alter. I don't feel better about football when the referees make correct decisions. So, I mean, VAR personally has actually enriched my life quite significantly this year because my team beat PSG thanks to VAR, and I now don't need to worry because for the rest of this season because the treble that my team won is safe for another year. But I wouldn't have had any complaints if City had gone through with an offside goal because sometimes it happens and you move on and you forget about it. So I haven't really changed my opinion about VAR because I just find the whole thing quite strange and spooky and artificial, and I'm not invested in officials getting correct decisions. I'm invested in the emotion and flow of the game much more. But I understand why people like VAR. So yeah, I wouldn't call someone anything for liking VAR, but for me, it doesn't turn me on.
Hey Daniel, how are things? Do you think we'll ever get to a point with VAR where maybe you can hear what the VAR officials essentially are saying? Because I think as a viewer, it's such a strange experience when you're watching it on TV and it pops up on the screen at the stadium before at home what's actually going on. Do you think we'll ever get to a position where we can get an insight into what the officials are saying to each other?
It's weird, isn't it? Because at the moment, I think the first thing they have to do in that regard is allow spectators to see the action, but they're still kind of sort of stuck in the 70s and 80s that somehow if a decision is contentious or right or wrong, then there'll be a riot. And it's a load of nonsense, but I think that would prevent it from us from being able to hear. I mean, we might get there in the end, but I think the first step is to put that stuff on the screen, and once they do that, then it's probably eventually we'll be able to hear what the officials are saying, although football crowds are quite noisy. It would be quite hard to be able to do that in the cacophony. And I think officials presumably would like that not to happen because they're risk-averse conservative types who would be worried that somehow they would say the wrong thing, or there would be something that wouldn't quite work. But yeah, I mean, I think that once it's already happening, and it is already happening, and we're not going back the other way, then you need to make it as comprehensive as possible and as spectator-friendly as possible, and that is definitely part of it. So I would agree that is something that would be sensible, but I think that until we're allowed to see what's actually going on, it won't happen.
Okay, Daniel, thanks for joining us this morning, and we'll speak to you again soon.
See you, lads. Bye.